Hello. This is a quick instructional video on running a labyrinth with cards in Dungeons & Dragons. This is a system I've created to make running mazes or labyrinths more interesting and less time consuming for both players and DMs. I've posted this in a few places on Reddit, and some folks have requested that I make this video, so here you go. We'll go over the cards first, and then we'll talk about the actions the players can take on their turns, and then we will walk through a round of play. So let's start with the cards. I'll pull some out of the deck here. Now I have drawn some art on my cards. These are blank white playing cards that you can get off Amazon. They come in a pack of 250 for a couple bucks. So you can end up with a lot of these, and you're going to want a lot of them. I find them very useful for not just this, but for a lot of other things while I DM. When you are constructing your deck, the deck has 15 cards in it. And each card type is in the deck by a certain amount. So there's a certain amount of each card in the deck. The cards are dead end cards, right path cards, monster cards, and trap cards. The two most important cards in the deck are dead end and right path. These two cards represent your party's skillfulness at traversing the labyrinth. When they get a right path card, they earn a point towards victory, and they need to get 5 points in order to find their way out. If they find a dead end card will limit the amount of choices they have in the next turns. They will also eventually add up to creating more chances to encounter the monster. The next most frequent card in the deck between these two, there are 5 of each in the deck for dead end and right path cards, is a trap card. There are 3 of these in the deck, and every time that you encounter a trap card, you will have the party try to disarm a trap, and if they can't, they will take the effects of whatever that trap is. I have prepared a small table that I roll on for these traps, so that I have a varying degree of traps that they could encounter. Every time a trap is revealed from the deck and then either disarmed or encountered to its effect, it is then removed from the game. And the reason for this is that if they've encountered the trap and disarmed it, they can't encounter it again. And a lot of traps are kind of one-time use. They don't really reload themselves. So once they've encountered the trap, it's no longer threatening. Right, it's technically disarmed itself. So once you reveal this and you've resolved its effects, you will remove it from the game. Kind of put it off to the side, doesn't get shuffled back into the deck. And then the last one, but probably the most menacing of all the cards, is the monster card. Excuse me, there were two of these in the deck, so your likelihood of finding them is pretty low. But like I said, if you reveal enough dead end cards, you will add more of these to the deck. Now, that might only happen once or twice while playing. It depends on how many players you have. The monster card is kind of a victory condition for the DM. When the monster card is revealed, the DM earns a point towards encountering a monster with the party. If they get 2, you take the monster that the DM has prepared ahead of time, in this case a minotaur, and the party has to fight that monster. When I create a monster for this kind of mode of play, I try to scale it up so it feels like a challenge for my party. But that doesn't mean it needs to be a single monster. It could easily be a pack of monsters, maybe a pack of goblins or a roving pack of wolves led by a dire wolf. It could be anything that you really want it to be. It could even be something that you roll on a table. You have a large table full of different kinds of creatures that you might encounter inside this labyrinth, and when they encounter the monster, they roll on that table and encounter whatever you have prepared. Once the monster has been defeated, you remove the monster card from the deck, making it less likely you'll encounter him again. But it is entirely possible. Those are the cards that contrive this deck. And they're kind of constructed in a way that the dead end and right path cards are equally likely to occur. The monster cards are less likely to occur than others. And the trap cards are likely to occur, but their occurrence rate will diminish as they encounter more. And that's kind of the structure of the deck. The 15 card deck, you'll put all those cards together, make a nice little deck out of them, and we'll use that for play. Let's talk about turns and rounds. So each round is comprised of many turns. The amount of turns in a round is based on how big your party is. Each player in the party takes a turn within a round. And on their turn, they have the two things that they can perform. They can perform an action, which should always happen before you reveal a card, and then they can reveal a card. The players will take those turns until they run out of available players, and then the round ends, and there's some kind of maintenance that happens at the end of a round. The actions that the party takes, this is an outdated sheet. You can find a more updated sheet of actions on the document that I've prepared, and you can find that in the description below. But the actions that the party takes are all based on some of the primary stats. So there's strength, dex, int, wisdom, charisma. So the 5 primary stats that any player might be putting most of their points into. Each one has a different effect, and and each one helps the party manipulate the deck and get better odds at finding right paths. So the Forge a Path, I'm gonna pull up let me pull up the updated ones, and we'll go over those because I don't want you to look at my old ones because they're not useful. Make this a little bigger. So let's look at the actions that we have in my document. Forge a Path is a action that kind of represents your barbarian, your strength character, your fighter, literally carving his way through the labyrinth using his brute force. Whether he uses his strength to break down a wall or cut through a viney pathway, or whatever else you can come up with based on the theme of your labyrinth. He uses his strength to kind of get himself there by any means. And what it does is it adds 2 additional right path cards to the discard pile from outside the game. And that little bit at the end is important to note. What it means is that you should prepare more cards than you're putting in the deck. It's also why I like having these blanks, because it means I can just kind of write down what the card is without making fancy card art and just chuck it into the discard pile when new cards get added to the deck. And so the discard pile makes it a delayed reward, but it makes it so that your deck has more right path cards in it when the deck finally reshuffles. And your deck will reshuffle multiple times depending on how many players you have at the table. Scout Ahead is a dex ability, something your rogue might want to do. This is a card or an action that allows you to reveal an additional card. It reveals the top card of the deck in addition to a card in the river, and we'll go over what the river is soon. And then you choose one of those 2 cards. The top of the deck I think is important because it means that you can use some of the other skills to kind of play off each other and set up a kind of nice combo that allows your players to feel real clever when they've figured it out, which is good. They should feel like they've kind of figured this out. It should feel like something they've puzzled their way through. Because there is an ability, the next ability actually will allow you to manipulate the cards on top of the deck. So there is kind of a sequence that is optimal here, and your party might identify that optimal sequence and then try to create that optimal sequence, which is good. They should be striving to do that. It should make them feel very very clever. It makes their character feel useful because it's the dex that is really driving home the ability to pull this skill off. But it's the player's ability to read these action effects and then identify that there's an optimal way to play them, and then trying to structure the turns so that it makes that happen. And so to follow up with that, It's Elementary is an intellect-based action, and that action allows you to draw 3 cards from the top of the deck. You choose one of those and you put it at the bottom of the deck. And then you shuffle the remaining cards in your hand and you place them on top of the deck. So you don't know the order that they're in on top of the deck, but you do know that at least the ones that were there were probably the least worst options, right? You've probably put the worst option on the bottom of the deck, and then on the top of the deck, you've put at least 2 options that you think you can handle. And then so if you use It's Elementary before using Scout Ahead, you know that the top card is probably going to be something very valuable. So whatever you reveal from the river is probably less valuable than whatever's on top of the deck because you've manipulated it to be more in your favor. Careful Consideration is a wisdom-based skill that allows you to choose 2 cards in the river and reveal them. It's pretty straightforward, but it just gives you better odds at finding a more advantageous card to choose from. And then the last one, Boost Morale, is probably it will probably be an underrated card or underrated action at the table. But the key part of Boost Morale, which is a charisma ability, it removes a dead end card in the river from the game. And then you get to draw a new card from the deck and place it face down in the river. Now, this is important because it not only gets you more choices if you've encountered a dead end card already, but it removes that dead end card from the game, reducing the frequency in which you will encounter them when the deck reshuffles. So those are your actions that the players can perform. The players can pick any one of them. It doesn't matter what their primary or most advantageous stat is. And there's a couple of things that you should probably keep in mind while using these actions. One, if you have 4 players or less, you will want to reduce the amount of actions available for the entire duration of the encounter to equal to your party number. So if you have 4, choose an action, maybe even at random by rolling a d6, and remove it from the available actions that players can choose from. If you have 3, you can remove 2 of them, etc. This mechanic might get a little muddy once you get down to like 2 players, but if you're playing with 2 players, this might not be something you're interested in anyway. The other thing that you want to do is you want to encourage a little randomness in the available abilities or actions that players can perform, maybe to try to shake up whether or not players are just trying to choose the most optimal action on their turn every time. So at the end of a round, after everyone has taken their turns, you can roll a d6 and you can determine which one of these actions you are going to lock out for the next round. And I would do that on every round. So even on the first round, if I have 4 players, on the first round I will have determined which one's not going to be in the game for the duration of the game, and then I'll roll a d6 or maybe I'll roll a d4 and pick based on that and say for this round, Forge a Path is not an available option, or for this round, Scout Ahead is not an available option. And then that will cycle as you kind of go. It also means that someone might not choose an action, or it might mean that someone might decide to do an action that they normally wouldn't because they're higher on the turn order. And maybe it'll be harder for them to perform. It just kind of keeps it a little interesting. It makes it a little more variable. They can't just count on being able to do the same action every round. All right, and so those are the actions. So let's get into playing real quick. I think we covered a lot of the basics of how this stuff works. Get that out of here. So just to reiterate, once the party has revealed 5 right path cards, they win. When the party reveals 2 monster cards, they fight a monster prepared by their dungeon master. Once the party reveals a trap card, they have a trap encounter where they try to disarm that trap and try to either survive the damage because they failed to disarm, or disarm it successfully and continue on. And then once the party reveals a dead end card, it stays in play. So when you start off, you'll obviously kind of set the scene and describe to your players what they are encountering. in my example, we'll use my example table inside of the document as our base, and I'll pull up my players, which I have their stats for, and we will kind of use that stuff to do a round. So this is an enchanted forest maze that I've kind of spec'd out. So I might say to the players, you walk through the threshold of this kind of whimsical forest, and as you do, you notice that the path behind you kind of seals up, and all of the available exit points that you knew of when you came in are now writhing with moving vines and trees and stuff that weren't there before, and your path is now barricaded. So, and I will then ask the party roll initiative. Everyone will roll initiative, including the DM. And then whatever the DM gets, this is your monster's initiative order. So I have a 13, so I fall in that order. But then the rest of the party rolls theirs, and they will fall in a certain order. And you'll, arrange that as you normally would with whatever method you use for tracking that. And that's good for two reasons. One, that sets the turn order for the Labyrinth game mode, but it also locks in the turn order for combat. And you can kind of treat this as a large encounter. So if you wanted to, when you do encounter the monster, you can encounter that monster kind of in the turn order. So whoever revealed it would then be the first person to go. But that's up to you. You don't have to do it that way. You could just start at your initiative order and just do combat normally. So you've had everyone roll for initiative. You've got your initiative order laid out wherever that is. You've shuffled your deck as well as you can. And then you deal 3 cards into the river. So when you read the document and it refers to the river, this is what I'm referring to, is these 3 cards here. So then you will go to whoever's up, and we'll say maybe it's the rogue. And the rogue will have the ability to choose an action, and he'll have hopefully a little action card in front of him, and they will try to perform one of those actions. Since the rogue is a high dex character, he's going to try to use the Forge of the Scout Ahead action. And so he makes a dexterity check against the maze's DC. And my maze's DC is 13. The 13 falls down into also the trap DCs. I scale my trap DCs based on the maze DC. So one trap might be 13 minus 1, so it's actually 12. Or 13 plus 1, so it's actually 14. And so if I ever wanted to reuse this setup in a later when the characters are higher level, I can adjust the maze DC up, say, 2 points, and know that all of the traps that I've created have also gone up in difficulty level. There is a table inside of the document that has all of these stats in it, so hopefully that will make sense when you look at it then. So we're going to roll. I got a 8. I know he has 3 for his bonus to dexterity, so get an 11. And 11 does not beat 13, so he does not get to perform that action. He kind of fumbles his way to scouting ahead. He goes to scout ahead, and he looks kind of in both directions, but he's just really not sure that any of that's useful. And then he gets to pick a card. So he picks this card, flips it over. It's a dead end card. These cards, I think, are a little confusing when you read how they work in the document. It's something I definitely should probably work on. But really all it means is that once they've revealed this dead end card, it stays here. We'll enter the cleanup phase of the turn, which means that you take the ones that weren't chosen and you discard them, except for the dead end card. Its special condition is that it stays and it's persistent. So that means that we'll roll into the next turn, and that turn will have less choices. They can't choose the dead end. They've gone down a path and found their way to a dead end and are now backtracking, and it's wasting time and it's adding fatigue to the party. And so now our next player is up, and that will be our druid. And our druid has the ability to pick from one of these actions, and she is going to use her careful consideration to try and find a better choice. And in this case, it's actually really strong because it just reveals both options. Careful consideration says that if you make this check, you reveal 2 cards in the river. Well, she rolls a 10. 10 plus her wisdom score of 4 is 14. That beats the maze DC. So we'll reveal these. Now, this is a difficult choice. They're going to have to either choose to get closer to the monster or choose a dead end. And maybe in this case they'll say, we'll take the monster because maybe that's better because we don't want to limit our choices next round. So those get discarded. There's 1 point for the monster. 1 more point means that they enter combat. And then we'll move forward to our cleric. 2 cards are revealed. The cleric gets to use an ability. Careful consideration is now locked. So he can't use that. So he's thinking, well, maybe my charisma is not that bad. I'm gonna just try it. We'll try. We'll see if we could get try to boost morale and get rid of this dead end card, so we just don't have it here anymore. He rolls a 3. 3 plus his score of 1 is 4. That does not beat it, so he doesn't get to use that action. But he then can reveal one of these cards, and we'll pick this one. It's a right path card. So we are 1 point towards victory, 1 point towards a monster. These cards go away. So, like I said, these stay here. They stay here even through the rounds. They will stay until it is either removed with a skill or until this board fills up. Eventually, we will get to 2, and then we will get to 3 dead end cards in here, and then they will clear. If the third one is revealed, they all get discarded. The stuff will go into the discard. And then you will take a monster card from outside of the game, and you'll put that in the deck. It kind of represents that in all of the time you've wasted finding these dead ends, the monster has grown even closer to you. And the gap between you and him has shrunk, so you are way more likely to encounter him now. And then you'll shuffle. Well, actually, you won't shuffle. I don't know why I just shuffled that. You will shuffle when your deck is empty. So now it's the barbarian's turn. Now that we've gone through and we've removed those dead ends by revealing 3 of them and put a monster card in the deck, they get 3 choices again. So he's going to use his action to forge a path, which allows him to add more right path cards to the deck. So 13 plus a score of 3 is 16. That definitely beats the main DC. So then you'll take additional cards from outside the game, 2, put them in the discard pile. And then as they play, he'll reveal. We get another dead end. So you'll kind of go through this a number of times until the deck runs out, right? We'll just keep doing that until eventually the deck runs out and you shuffle it back up. So now the deck has 2 more right path cards. So they have 7 right path cards in the deck to find. They also have 3 monster cards to find. And so the odds of encountering this stuff have kind of grown a little. They may have just shifted a little and then shifted back because you're adding right paths and then you're adding monster cards at a less than equal rate. So you're still more likely to encounter the right path cards, but than the monster cards. But that's the name of the game. That's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to kind of eliminate threats by performing these actions and feeling hopefully clever about their choices there, and then find their way out of the labyrinth. So hopefully that helps you guys kind of understand the document a little better. That is linked below in the comments. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment on here and I'll try to get to it, or hit me up on Reddit. If you've seen that post on Reddit, you should know what my Reddit handle is, but I'll put it in the description. And then, yeah, just let me know what you think. If you have any critiques or if you want to try to expand on this, absolutely do so. Let me know your critiques. Take it, change it, turn it into something that you might want to use in your game. Hopefully this was useful for you guys. And if it wasn't, well, maybe it just wasn't for you. All right. Hope that was helpful. I will see you guys next time.